This is episode 2 of how to do repaints for Microsoft Flight Simulator 2004. Previously we'd saved all the textures ready for editing, as you'll see now in this window here. In fact, I'll maximise that. So we've got all the textures ready for editing. Next thing we want to do is fire up Photoshop. To do that, I've got it set double click, so we'll just double click on one of the bitmaps and that will launch Photoshop. What we'll be learning in this episode will be the tools of Photoshop and navigating around. There's only really a few tools we use in Photoshop and I'll explain them as we go along. It's a relatively simple program to use. The layers are easy to use. Overall it's a really easy program. We'll be looking at adding, removing layers, drawing paths, using the brush tool, pencil tool, just going through. So here we are loading in Photoshop and there's our texture. Now we're going to zoom in on this area here and you'll see that there's our textures ready for editing. I'm zoomed into 200% here. Main tools we're going to concern ourselves with though in Photoshop will be the pen tool, which is here. Pen tool is used for drawing shapes, so I'll just do a demonstration like so. I mean, that's just one use of it. Another tool we'll be looking at is the brush tool. Draw easy as. Pencil tool as well, more or less like the brush but without the anti-alias. And the eraser, which as you all know erases these things. We'll probably also look at shapes as well, but for now we'll have a look around Photoshop. So over on the right here we have our colour swatches. We also have our adjustments, but we'll not get into that till the later stages in a different episode. We also have our layers, channels and paths area. Channel shows you things like the alpha channel, your red, green, blue values, your red channel. I mean, you can hide various channels. To show you paths, we'll get into that later. Also looking at using the filter and blur options. That will be again later on. First things first though, we need to make sure our colours are set to black and white, which is done by clicking this default foreground and background colours, which can be done by pressing the D key. So now we've pressed D, we've got our foreground and background colours. We're going to select the pen tool with a single click. Now if you'll recall previously we had it set to draw vector shapes. What we're going to do this time, just backtrack, right click, delete. Okay, what we're going to do this time is go up to the top here, just below edit you'll see an icon for drawing paths. It's next to the box and we select that. Now, thing to remember with paths is they're basically just lines that you're going to stroke later on. So if we click here at the start of this line and then hold shift, what shift does is it constrains it to 45-degree increments. So we can go 45s off to the right, pure 90, onto the 270 and keep on going round. We're going to hold shift down and drag it up this line. Now, top tip from me, again just click at the end of the line where you want it. Top tip from me: to end a path, hold down control and click off it. That draws your path ready. Top tip from me is when you're drawing panel lines, draw the vertical and horizontal first. So like I'm doing here. Again, just to draw, click, shift, drag it out, click, control click. Now you'll see we've got horizontals going across these. So what we do is we put them near the previous vertical lines we just created, not on the vertical lines but near. Then we use the arrow keys to put them on the vertical lines. And again, same thing, shift and then drag it out. You will notice as you get near another line that you lose the constraining at 45s. Now what you do in this case is you drag it out beyond that, and again you use the arrow keys to put it on the line. and then you control click. As you see, we've got a series of panel lines there, 2 panels, top and lower, and then we'll draw another one in. Again, click, use the arrow keys to move, drag it out, click again, use the arrow keys to move it back, and then control click. And it's easy enough to get your head round. I mean, just going to compare that to the image. I mean, look, we've got issues here galore. I mean, the panel lines aren't exactly as you see in the 3 view. Unfortunately, I'm not going to show you how to do that. I'm going to leave that to yourselves to figure out. I'm just going to trace the lines we've already got. So, click, drag it out, and click again, and then move it out with the arrow keys. And you just keep doing this for all these panel lines, which I will do now, and then I'll resume once it's all done. And I'm back, and there we go. We've now drawn out all the vertical and horizontal lines onto the textures that we're going to be using. Again, I'm just tracing the textures that were provided. Normally, if I wasn't doing a tutorial, I'd completely redraw the thing to the spec provided in the 3 view there. But for now, we're just going to trace what's there. Next thing we have to do is to create a new layer. This can either be done by going to the top and selecting layer, new layer, and it will bring up a box, and we'll just hit OK on that for now. That creates a new layer. Another way of creating a new layer is to go down to the bottom here between the trash icon and the create new group icon is a page turned. If you click that, it automatically creates a new layer to the default settings. Next thing we do is go to the brush tool, which is done by clicking on the icon and holding down and selecting brush, and we make sure it's got a settings of 1% spacing, 0% hardness, and then also we're going to make sure the pencil's set up for these horizontal and vertical lines. So again, hold down on the brush icon, select pencil, and by default this is set at 1 pixel. So we'll just make sure. Again, onto the brush window, spacing, take that down to 1%, hardness of 100% with this, and a size of 1 pixel. Okay, so we minimise that and we reselect our pen tool, like so. Alright, now you right click anywhere on the image and you go down to stroke path. If you select stroke path, it gives you the options of what to stroke the path with. So we'll select pencil and we'll make, oops, let's do that again, make sure my colour's set first. So we right click, select stroke path, come down to pencil, and then hit OK. You'll now notice that something's happened by the lines. Right, what we do now is we right click again, and we hit delete path. What's that done is it's drawn on our panel lines for us. So now by clicking the eye icon next to the layers, we can see our paths appearing and disappearing as I click. Great. Next step is to do these diagonal lines. Same method used, except we're going to create another new layer, and we're going to draw on the diagonals. Now there's one here, like so, and I think that's the only one on the textures. Just holding down control and moving, scrolling my mouse wheel to navigate around. Yep. And then again, same thing applies. Right click, stroke path, and then this time we're going to use brush. Make sure simulate pressure is unchecked and hit OK. Again, that's created a new line. Right click, delete path. And there you'll see we have a diagonal line. Now we can go back to layer 1, our previous, and for this we're going to select the pencil tool, and we're going to zoom in on these 2 panels here that look as though they're going to be a bit of a nuisance. What we do is we click a start point with the pencil, and then we press shift and click at the end point, and it draws a straight line. Again, shift, click at the end point. Just keep going round defining the start and end points for your lines, like so. Another one here, and there we go. That's all the panel lines on for one side, just using the trace method. Then we right click layer 2, the topmost layer, and come down to merge down. What it does is it's now merged these two layers together. To get it onto the other side, so onto this side, we right click on layer 1, we duplicate it, make sure it's the same document, we'll just save it as layer 1 copy, and then we come up to the top, edit, transform, flip horizontal. And again, using the arrow keys, and hold down shift and use the arrow keys, and it goes up in greater increments, left and right greater increments. But once we get close, sort of here, we'll switch to using just the arrow keys. What we're doing is we're just lining it up on the previous textures, so that's looking about right. And then we right click the topmost layer again and merge down. Simple really, isn't it? Next thing we're going to do is we are going to create a background colour layer. To do this, we again select the background layer, create a new layer, and select the paint bucket icon. Make sure it's on paint bucket tool and not gradient fill. I'm just going to switch my colours around there and select a midish grey, and then flood fill, like so. And there you can see our two sets of panel lines. To rename a layer, double click its name, and we'll call this one background colour. We'll rename the topmost one panel lines. So there you go, that's two layers created as per the original textures. Next thing we're going to do is make a duplicate of the panel lines again. This is done by right clicking the panel lines layer, hitting duplicate layer, and we're going to call this one panel lines dirt, or you can call it panel lines shading, and then hit OK. What that's done is that's made an exact copy of the panel lines. I mean, I can switch them around as much as I like and they stay the same. For now I want them both on, and we go up the top here to filter. And then we hit filter, blur, Gaussian blur. Now, it depends what you want sort of effect wise. Here I generally use 3 pixels for a panel line shading or blur. So we'll keep it with that and hit OK. Next thing I'm going to do is go to panel lines here, and then select this, whoops, just double clicked, and then select this drop down here where it's currently on normal. If I set this to overlay, that makes it an overlay layer. Now that will mean it doesn't look like it's doing much at the moment, but if I were to drop the or change the background colour to a reddish colour, not a reddish colour, to a yellowy colour, you'll notice that the lines take their shading from the background colour layer and they get a colour of their own. So what we want to do is, let's just put the background colour as it was, set the panel lines to an opacity of around 6. That do is it hide it, and then panel line shading, select that layer, again set it to overlay, and opacity of around 20%, like so. That's all there pretty much is to it. If you just keep doing that for the texture sheets till you've got all the panel lines done, I'll rejoin you once I've done all the texture sheets myself, trace the lines and all that fun stuff. So episode 3 we'll look at adding slight weathering, and we'll also look at adding the scheme and previewing it in the sim. So at the end of part 2 here, thanks for watching, and if you have been, see you later.